said Lotus was ultimately destined. And that is, like I said, we'll discuss that in a slightly future date.
But isn't it true to some extent that Lotus could help Kaela now?
That was the perspective of the P-45 J-rods, and that is not my perspective.
I see. So, because I'd make a distinction between Kaela, who's what I understand a P-52, and the P-45. So, but they're on the same,
they were on the same timeline, the same track, but just separated by 7,000 years.
Okay, so even so,
which is quite a big separation.
What we got, so what you're saying is that in a sense, Kaela couldn't get the benefits of Lotus because
nor did he ask for it.
Okay.
Nor did he ask for it. And I will say this. This is something that David spoke with David on the phone not that long ago. I'll leave the last name off. I think you know who I'm.
Sure, but we can use his name if it's okay with you.
Well, sure, David Wilcock.
Okay, yeah, because we just interviewed him.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Yeah. And he was talking. We were discussing the same thing, which was the box, the cube. And I said, I said, the strange thing happened. I was pro tempore made MJ9 for the 12 as a result of a bet that went on within MJ12. And I got a chance to tap who ended up being the last MJ9 prior to the adjournment. And before tapping her, who was the first female to ever set in the 12, I got a chance to look at certain documents and look through certain archives in Washington, D.C. prior to going across to the continent and meeting with some folks and telling them basically I wasn't interested in their offers. I'm talking about a trip to Brussels.
The Illuminati?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And during the same time, the cube disappeared. And it hasn't been seen since. And it disappeared out of the archives. Of course, I have no idea. I have no idea where the item may be, but I do know this: I'm happy that they can't find it, because what they were doing is they were handing this cube around, and this is a question that Bill had asked, whether there was only one cube. They were handing this cube around from country to country to the elitists in the countries to look into their own future so that they could pick the best paths for themselves. Why don't they just live their lives and try to be good people? Why do they need a little black box to tell them when to jump and how to jump? That's not being fully human, or at least from my perspective and those of our associates. That's not being fully human. So, as I understand it, disappeared. Now, there have been certain, allegations that have been made that during the time when I had, it's almost a year ago now, when I had the bad seizure. It was near the end of last year, was it? No.
I think it was about a year.
It was about a year ago, and I had a very severe seizure and was actually put out of commission seriously for a while. And there was a big hullabaloo to get over to my apartment to get something out of my apartment. What that object was, I won't comment. But I will say this to everybody: whomever took it, it's in safe hands and it won't be used to harm humanity.
All right.
In fact, the fact that it's in safe hands will prevent it from being used to harm humanity. It has been thus far only used, aside from, well, I mean, I've got to try to justify my own behavior in Bandolier of using it for the purposes of skewing to get Lotus off and the abductions off, but I think that was for a beneficial cause.
Right.
But it has been used since actually the 50s by the potentates, by the leaders of the various countries, to skew the history.
Wow, that's amazing.
Of the human race.
Right.
And the common folk, the average people, all of us, have a right to a future which is our own, and not being skewed and designated and promulgated and promoted and provoked by blue bloods who feel that they are above everyone else.
Well, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
I think we probably all owe you a great thanks for that. Dan.
No, I'm happy to pass along the information. I'm honored to pass along the information that I understand that the Yellow Book is no longer accessible.
Yes.
That's all I know about it, though.
I understand. I totally understand, and thank you for that information.
That may be the reason too why the Illuminati hasn't done something to us, and it may also be the reason on the other end why the old Magi haven't, and it may be why they're all so quiet and
Right. They
I don't know.
have the upper hand anymore, in essence.
The people should have the upper hand, and they should have the upper hand for their own destiny, and that's why we too have gone as far as what we have to expose the NSSM 200 report, which was put in during the Ford administration, which I believe was written by Dr. Henry Kissinger, wherein he suggested the possible use of food as a weapon, and its use against, in fact, as a tool against the third world. Now, at the same time, we notice that there's a correlation going on. You can find this from the IPCC report concerning global warming, that if the world average temperature rises, I believe, between 2 and 3 degrees Celsius, that the northern hemisphere, the higher latitude growth will increase. However, if it goes over that, it will decrease. Yet the lower latitudes, by the way, that's where you find most of the third world countries, the 2 to 3 degree Celsius increase will cause starvation and crop loss.
Okay.
Now, isn't this funny?
Yeah.
How they're just allowing the global warming to increase with the provoking with the use of fossil fuels. I'm not saying that's the total cost. It's not. There are cycles involved, short as well as long-term cycles. But isn't that funny? And it's my best guess that they'll probably order just enough ameliorative steps to be taken where it levels off, where the higher latitude or the higher latitudes probably don't lose their crops, where you find the majority of the rich countries.
Interesting. Well, that's actually a fascinating political observation. I think that it is also interesting that most of the crops are being grown, though, in the lower latitudes. They're not being grown in North America anymore.
Right, but you have sustainability, though.
Sure.
Whereas when you have the loss of the crops in the lower latitude, you're also losing a lot of the population from the third world, which unfortunately, according to the way that the documents read, some people find them expendable.
Right. Well,
we don't feel that way.
That's the Iron Mountain report also talks about things of that nature. And you're familiar with that.
I've heard of it.
Well, it's freely available on the net to be read, and it talks about that, something very similar to that.
Right. I'm not one that likes to interject myself in politics at all.
No,
I like
I
the
know
state
that.
of the state of the
that.
research.
But at the same time.
Well, at the same time, I mean, when we start hearing that the codex is being placed in place, which actually delimits food value. Oh, you can have all the food you want and starve to death while you're eating it if there's no nutrients.
Right. Absolutely.
When I start hearing that food is being used as a weapon, and it's being used concerning the use of fossil fuels, I start getting personally angry. There's not one person in the lower latitudes that's worth any less than me.
Right.
You know, everybody is worth exactly the same thing on this earth,
Yep.
And unfortunately, there are individuals who feel otherwise.
I understand. Okay, so Bill, the question you were asking, now that we've kind of, let's talk about, first